Cycling has always been a sport of endurance, strategy, and sometimes controversy. From doping scandals to illegal drafting, riders have tried to bend the rules in their favor. But one of the most bizarre stories in the history of cycling involves a man who didn't just bend the rules, he completely broke them. Imagine competing in one of the toughest races in the world, pushing your body to the limit only to find out that someone else took a shortcut by hopping on a train. This is the story of Jean Robic, the cyclist who cheated in one of the most legendary ways possible. To understand why this story is so infamous, we have to go back in time, to the early days of professional cycling. The Tour de France, one of the most grueling races in the world, was founded in 1903. But in those early years, cycling races were chaotic. Riders had to endure extreme weather, terrible road conditions, and almost no official oversight. Judges and referees couldn't follow the riders all the time, and cheating was actually quite common. Competitors would sometimes get help from spectators, hold on to cars, or even take shortcuts. But what Jean Robic allegedly did? It took cheating to a whole new level. Jean Robic was a strong cyclist, but not always the fastest. The story goes that during a particularly tough stage of the race, Robic found himself far behind the leading pack. Faced with exhaustion and knowing he had little chance of catching up, he made a shocking decision, one that no cyclist had ever attempted before. Instead of pedaling his way to victory, Robic allegedly jumped on a train. Yes, a train. While other cyclists were grinding away on dusty, unpaved roads, Robic was sitting comfortably inside a rail car, watching the countryside roll by. Now, you might be wondering, how did he pull this off? Well, in those days, there weren't many cameras or officials monitoring every rider's move. With long stretches of road left unguarded, it was actually possible for a cyclist to disappear for a while and reappear further down the route. As the train sped toward the next town, Robic must have thought he had pulled off the ultimate heist. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Robic got off the train, rejoined the race, and continued pedaling as if nothing had happened. But his plan had one major flaw. He had underestimated just how obvious his sudden comeback would be. Spectators and officials quickly noticed that something wasn't right. Other cyclists, who had been struggling through the brutal stage, were confused when they saw Robic suddenly ahead of them, looking far too fresh for someone who had just been battling the same grueling conditions. Some reports even say that other racers overheard townspeople talking about seeing a cyclist boarding a train. Word spread quickly, and before long, officials were on high alert. When confronted, Robic reportedly tried to deny it, but the evidence was overwhelming. He had traveled a distance far too quickly for it to be possible on a bicycle. He was promptly disqualified from the race, cementing his place in cycling infamy. After being caught, Robic's reputation took a serious hit. While cycling had its fair share of cheaters, riding a train was seen as a step too far. He became a laughingstock in the cycling community, with newspapers mocking his attempt to game the system. Surprisingly, however, Robic didn't completely disappear from the sport. He continued to compete, though his name was forever associated with the scandal. Meanwhile, his story became one of the most infamous examples of cheating in sports history. Even today, cycling fans look back at the early years of the Tour de France and shake their heads at just how wild things used to be. Of course, cheating didn't stop with Robic. The sport has had its fair share of controversies, from performance-enhancing drugs to mechanical doping, but few stories are as bold or as ridiculous as the time a cyclist rode a train to cheat his way to victory. So, what can we learn from this bizarre chapter in sports history? Well, for one, cheating never really pays off. Robic's stunt might have given him a short-lived advantage, but it ultimately ruined his credibility. More importantly, this story reminds us of how different sports used to be. Today, races are monitored with GPS, cameras, and strict regulations. But back then, things were wild. And while modern cheating scandals might involve high-tech doping schemes, none of them are quite as hilarious as a cyclist secretly hopping on a train mid-race. So the next time you hear about an athlete bending the rules, just remember, at least they aren't literally riding a train to the finish line. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.